So, hi and welcome to this inaugural edition of the South Asia Monitor Youth Dialogue. What makes this program a little different is that it's fully youth driven. The idea is to bring a new generation perspective into conversation on a contemporary national and global issues and to create a space where young voices are not just listening but engaging directly with experienced thinkers and practitioners. All of us on this side of the conversation today, except our guest, of course, are under the age of 25. Myself, Piyush, and I'm the moderator for this session. And over the next 20 minutes, my colleagues and I'll be in conversation with Mr. Mayank Chhaya, sir, who is a veteran journalist and writer with over 4.5 decades of reporting experience across India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and United States. Since 1982, he has covered major developments out of India, is widely known for his commentary on global affairs, particularly South Asian and Sino-Tibetan issue. He's also the authorized biographer of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, with his acclaimed book Man, Monk, Mystic, published in 24 languages. He has also worked in filmmaking as the creator of the documentary Gandhi Song. He had his interview series Mayank Chhaya reports on the YouTube as well. So that's all about our guest. I think we can begin with the questions now. So yeah, share.
All right. Sir, you have spent over 4 decades in journalism and then moved into filmmaking and writing. Did that shift come from creative curiosity or from a feeling that one medium wasn't enough to tell the kind of stories that you wanted to?
No, not really. In fact, cinema has always been my abiding interest. It's just that I haven't gotten around to doing anything of substance yet, but hopefully before I die, which may not be that far, I may do something. The way I look at it, cinema or any creative pursuit that we are talking about begins with writing. And writing is something that is my home turf. I've been writing since the age of 13. I started my first poetry writing when I was 13. In fact, I remember even the very first verse that I wrote. It went, "Darwaza dekhta hu main ki koi apna aaye. Darwaza dekhta hu main ki koi apna aaye. Darwaze se darta hu main ki aake wo na jaye." That was when I was 13. We're talking about, I'm 65 now, so you can do the calculation. That was how. So, anyway, coming to your question, I think generally media has always been of great interest to me. Within that, visual medium attracts me because I think I have a sense of, very strong sense of visuals generally. I've been painting for a long time, but I haven't gotten around to making a feature film yet. I have at least half a dozen scripts ready to go. So, but to the particular point about whether I think the media may not hold that much interest, no. In fact, I remain at heart very much a hard news committed print journalist. But I'm doing other things like Piyush mentioned my documentary, Gandhi Song. I don't know how many of you have seen it or are aware of it. There is an iconic bhajan called Vaishnava Janto, which is always sung. It's one of the world's most widely sung songs. People always associate that with Gandhi, as if Gandhi wrote it. I'm sure you know it was written over 5 centuries before Gandhi. It's written by a very iconic Gujarati poet, philosopher called Narasimha Mehta. And my intent was to tell the world that here is a truly great poet philosopher who wrote hundreds of ballads and other things. And this one became a sort of an iconic song. So that was my entry into the visual medium. Hopefully at some point in the next 2-3 years, I'll end up making a couple of feature films that, like I said, I have several scripts ready to go. So that's my interest. But yes, media remains very much part of my interest.
All right, sir. You have reported from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and now from the US for decades. When you look at India today, especially through the lens of younger audience, does it feel more confident in telling its own story or more conscious of how it is perceived?
I'm a great admirer of people of your generation. All of you are almost my children's ages. my son is 30, my daughter is 23. So I married her rather late. So that's the age difference. I'm very plugged into your generation. I find all of you very skilled at what you do. I who would say that हमारे ज़माने में तो इस तरह से बातें हैं. I mean, I don't believe in that kind of construct at all. I think the interesting thing which people don't realize is the confluence of communications technologies that you are born into. I mean, I come from a time when if I had to make a phone call, I had to go to a local post office and basically plead with the postal staff to let me make one phone call. Now you are here with the confluence of mobile smartphones, with broadband and internet. Now it's an astounding coming together of technologies which has democratized expression for people of your generation. And I find that all of you are really, really skilled at using mobile phones for that purpose. So I think you live in a fascinating time, and all of you seem to be using rather well. So I applaud you for that. And I think your generation is the one that will fundamentally make all the difference that we need. I mean, you saw what happened to digress a little bit, you saw what happened in Hungary when they ousted Viktor Orban. The younger generation of people like you came out. So I'm extremely upbeat on those of your age. So full credit to all of you.
All right, sir. So now up to Priyanshi.
Okay, Priyansha is traveling, so I'll just take her question here. So, sir, one of the fascinating thing I found in your, a kind of biography, or I kind of found when Tarun sir told me about you, that you have met Rajesh Khanna sir and Devanand sir. I mean, for our generation, we count them as a iconic. And one of the
Yes,
arguments which people give nowadays, that as SRK even has mentioned, that he is the last of superstar. And nowadays it's
indeed.
all about the PR and things of algorithm and all of it. So do you think that with the culture of the superstar and the culture of this PR will contrasting, and anyhow would it be possible in today's time that we will be having any sort of Rajesh Khanna again or Devanand sir again?
They were both products of their very unique time. For instance, Devanand started in the 50s,
Yeah.
in fact, late 40s to be precise. And Rajesh Khanna, his ascendancy began sometime in 1968, 69. So we are talking about a very different era when communications technologies were not anywhere close to what all of you are used to. So I think the lack of access that people had gave them that enigma, that aura, that mystique that people were fascinated by. Your question about whether if they entered the era today, how would they deal with the PR systems and algorithms and things like that? I think they would do it rather well, but I think you may not have the kind of stardom that they enjoyed. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples since you mentioned my friendship with both. I'm talking about sometime in 1994, 95 time phase. I knew Rajesh Khanna for a quarter century till he died. I knew Devanand for as long. I didn't know them as sort of movie stars, but as a journalist would come to know interesting people. So once I was walking with Rajesh Khanna into the Ashoka Hotel, the iconic Ashoka Hotel, which is still around, I believe. As I walked in with him, there was a family of three: father, son, and daughter. Sorry, father, mother, and daughter. And they saw Rajesh Khanna, and they absolutely froze in their tracks. And they were stuttering and stammering, just pointing at him. And Rajesh Khanna was, of course, used to these things. And they wanted to talk to him. So they all came and very gingerly stretched their hand out and said, Gee, they couldn't say anything. And Rajesh Khanna basically made up on their behalf. And they all started crying. Now imagine, a father must be in his perhaps 50s, mother was perhaps in her 40s, and the daughter in her 20s. Completely different generations. And yet in 1990, well past Rajesh Khanna's prime, That's the kind of impact the man had even then. So you can imagine the stardom he enjoyed. You know, there was a ridiculously funny story about Rajesh Khanna when he was shooting for Hathi Mere Sathi, which was with elephants. The rumor went around that one of the elephants gored Rajesh Khanna and he went blind. Now think about this. No matter how big Rajesh Khanna's head is, do you really believe that an elephant tusks, two tusks can blind a man? But people believe that a lot of them tried to commit suicide on that. Now, that is the level of stardom we are talking about. The same with Devanand. I mean, I've seen it firsthand with both of these men. But I think if they had come of age in this time, I suppose they would have figured out a way to deal with it because they're essentially people in the movie industry are very extremely smart at dealing with fame, people, stardom. They're very good at that. So I suppose they would have figured out a way to deal with the current times.
I mean, so in their timeline, there was no Instagram. In their timeline, there was no Twitter. But nowadays, people are having, nowadays, celebrities are having. So would that have impacted on any level?
No, I think, like I said earlier, a lot of what we are talking about, stars of that generation, be it Dalip Kumar, Raj Kapoor, Devanand, Rajesh Khanna, Dharmendra, all of them, I think part of the reason they became what they became was because the access was not easy at all. People used to just wonder about who these people are. I mean, you couldn't, if you caught a glimpse of Devanand driving his parrot green Fiat in the Bombay of the 1980s, people would scream. That's all you saw of Devanand. Now, these guys are in your face every day, flaunting their airport looks and all kinds of looks. So I think that mystique has gone, but I suppose they have fame of a different kind. But I think I'm coming from that generation, I find that more interesting because that mystique remains and you're not that easily available to your admirers.
Interesting, sir. Now I'd like to hand it over to Arjun.
So we're talking about Bollywood, and the most popular debate we have is that of nepotism, right? Uh, do you really think talent trumps, the family name, or is it vice versa? Do you think that can happen?
You know, the talent always triumphs. Even if you get an early access because of who you are,
Mhm.
eventually talent takes over. I mean, if you look at any of these stars, Amitabh Bachchan was an outsider when he came. He was a complete outsider. So was Shah Rukh Khan. So were so many others. So it's not. I don't think. Okay, nepotism maybe makes your entry easy, but after that, it's an open season on you. There are so many children of movie stars who haven't made it. I think talent really takes over after the first or maybe second film. People do judge you on the basis of your merit rather than your lineage. So I think the this nepotism debate works only in the limited context of young people getting early access to the movie industry, which is a problem even without nepotism. I mean, it's not easy to get into the movie industry. And the problem is there are so many of them now, but at the same time, the platforms have grown. You have so many different avenues to showcase your talent, including on YouTube. You don't need the industry at all to make a full-length feature film and release it on YouTube. You don't need any of those established names to back you up. So I think it's already happening in that way. So I think nepotism debate is a bit silly one. It has some currency among the film industry types, but I find it a bit ridiculous, and it's been done to death.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now over to Ishita.
Hello, sir. My
Hi.
question is related to Shabusli ma'am. And before I ask my question, I just want to mention that it's very unfortunate to have such a loss. And we cannot deny the fact that Asha Bhosle ma'am was among the most versatile singers in the music industry. And her absence feels like a huge loss to the industry and to us also. And may her soul rest in peace. So, my question is with Asha Bhosle, ma'am, we saw a career built on reinvention and longevity. So, today, especially in the age of quick fame, do you think the industry still rewards that kind of depth?
I think from what I observed, the movie industry has an intrinsic feel to spot a talent. They are very good at that. I think it's you have to give them credit. They wouldn't just pick up anyone and make a star out of. Take years, decades of stars, be it in singing, in composing, in acting, in cinematography. All of them, you would find that they had the basic talent to become what they became. In the case of Asha Bhosle was a league of her own. She was, in my book, the same league as her more illustrious sister Lata Mangeshkar, whom I interviewed one for a couple of hours. I never got to meet Asha Bhosle because I never sought an interview with her. But Asha Bhosle was an astounding talent. Uh, from the age of 10 to now, it's you're talking about 8 decades of singing talent. And look at the sheer range of what she sang. I think it's right now it's difficult because movie industry has fundamentally changed since Asha Bhosle and Lata Mangeshkar began. Obviously, that's the nature of anything in life. But you have, say, someone like Shreya Ghoshal. Shreya Ghoshal is a brilliant singer, but I don't know if they can acquire the kind of sort of beatific status that these two sisters or Mohammad Rafi or Kishore Kumar did. That's because the times have changed. But within that, I mean, when Sonu Nigam walks or Shan walks in or Shreya Ghoshal walks or any of these, Alka Yagnik, any of these terrific singers, they do get the kind of awe-laden respect that a lot of older generation got. But we're talking about Asha Bhosle and Lata Mangeshkar. It's a different league. I mean, we have it's just a fact of life. In terms of their endurance, the lasting long, I think it's everything to do with their talent and the fact that they came at a time. See, all of them grew up in the golden age of Hindi cinema music, especially the late 1950s, right up to early 1970s is considered the golden age, especially the 60s. Take any song from the 1960s and you would marvel at the depth of writing and the depth of singing and the depth of composing, everything. It you do get it now, but it's not exactly the same. So, but I think Asha Bhosle is an exceptional figure. There is just no other way to put it. There won't be anyone else like that for quite some time to come.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so I'm having this very specific question. I mean, I'm dealing with this dichotomy for a long time now. That is, society impacts the cinema or does cinema impacts the society? For example, if we try to talk about, I don't know whether you are aware or not, how Dhurandhar has just generated a amount of things in India right now, or
Right.
even on the national sites or national media is just pushing out the Dhurandhar daily. So, and when we try to talk about the filmmaker behind it, Aditya Dar, who describes Indian audience as one of the smart audience we have at a globe. While I was just going through this argument by Satyajit Ray, that he mentioned that Indian audience is one of the most backward audience we have in the globe. So, I mean, when we try to look out towards this sort of dichotomies, or we try to look out even the amount of fame Animal movie got, or the amount of fame Dhurandhar got, both are a very hyper violative or some sort of masculine kind of things. So, what sort of dichotomy we are having with regard to cinema and society?
You talk. I know what you're talking about when you cite Satyajit Ray, but you have to remember that this is 2026. We're talking about Satyajit Ray of the 1960s, 70s, 80s. It was a very different audience which was never exposed to world cinema. It was not exposed to the kind of entertainment that your generation and even slightly older generation have been because of, like I said, communications revolution. So I think it would be unfair to compare what Mr. Ray said and what Aditya Dhar may be saying. It is true that Indian audiences have become much smarter. They have become much more discriminating. They see through fake stuff pretty quickly, especially people like I said, people in their 20s. You can't fool them too long. They have different intelligence quotient, I find. So I think it's not the same, obviously. Satyajit Ray had a point in his time, because especially the kind of cinema that he made, it's not for everyone even now. So to think that it would be universally admired when he was alive would be a bit of a stretch. But I think it's like I said, it's not fair to compare the two.
So, I
Your
mean,
point
sorry
about
for cutting out here, but I think there is this, diversify in my question. I mean, what I'm trying to tell here that I was going through this argument on the Instagram, not anywhere else, not, any sort of website or something. But there was so many people who were relating with this argument of Satyajit Ray that whatever Indian audience has been served, they are getting into that spectrum. They are not going for any sort of research. Even if we were to talk about Dhurandhar, there is a lot of assumption or accusation which is made on the movie that it's a government centric or it's a propaganda or whatever it is. So in that sense, I'm just trying to make sense here that does society impacts the cinema or does cinema impacts the society here?
it's always society that impacts cinema, in my judgment, because that's where all plots come from society, right? Eventually, everything a writer writes, he or she has imbibed from what he or she has seen around. Of course, there are fantasy stories, but we are not getting into that. But by and large, the kind of movies that we talk, say, for instance, Dhurandhar. Now, the politics of Dhurandhar is not problematic, but it's an interesting one in my judgment. I've seen only the part one. I haven't seen part two. I don't know if I'll watch it. But having reported from Pakistan and having, in fact, been to Lyari, I have some understanding of what's going on here. But your point about whether cinema impacts society or society impacts cinema, at some point, it becomes an overlap, but it begins, in my judgment, with society. What cinema absolutely does reflect what goes on in society, and to some extent, I'm sure even Dhurandhar does. It has picked up bits and pieces of what has happened, and then amplified it, put it on steroids in such a way, using the powerful medium of cinema to give it almost operatic level of violence that you see in part one. I thought the violence was spectacularly done. It was gratuitous, but it was purely in terms of the way they executed it. They did it very well. You have to recognize that. You may not agree with the politics that is propelling that violence, but purely just if you look at it purely as cinema, it was interesting one. Although in my book, I wouldn't call it a great film. It's just an interesting, compelling film for that period when you're watching. Beyond that, I wouldn't go.
All right, so now I'd like to hand it over to Ishita.
So, you have had the unique experience of working both as a journalist and as a filmmaker. So, today, with content being produced so quickly across platforms and in this fast paced environment where attention spans are shorter and algorithm often influence what people see. So, where do you think there is a greater risk of storytelling becoming one sided or influenced?
I suppose it's a combination of both. But once again, I would argue that from this churning that you're seeing in terms of algorithmic churning that we are talking about, a great deal of creativity is emerging. There are all kinds of interesting things being made and released on YouTube and elsewhere. Even little reels sometimes have so much creativity. Even if it's an absurd reel about something, you have to admire the fact that there is something creative going on behind the scenes. I saw a video of a guy, I think, was it in Thailand, perhaps, There was a pretty young woman on a swing going up and down, and this guy has his iPhone, and the jerks with which he's taking the angles, and then eventually when he releases the final product, you can see that the man has tremendous amount of creativity in terms of conceptualizing what he's shooting. Now, if you saw him just shooting, you might think, who's this insane guy? But you know exactly what he was doing. So I think I'm by nature a very open person. I'm open to all kinds of technologies, all kinds of themes, all kinds of concepts, even if some of them are offensive. I'm generally not offended by anything in life. So I'm okay with what is going on in terms of content creation, short attention span. That's the reality of life. You just live with it. I mean, I'm not going to complain about the fact that people don't spend a lot of time watching and ruminating and thinking. That's the era we live in. I mean, you can't keep complaining about the era that you live in. You have to just lump it and move on. Maybe things will change. Maybe they won't change, but so what? I mean, we have come from 300,000 years of history. So get used to it. I'm talking about the modern human starting 300,000 years ago. So that's my broad overview of what you're asking me. I don't know if I answered your question, but if I haven't, I'm happy to retake that.
Very true, sir. Whatever you said, it's really relate to it.
Thank you.
So, you extensively wrote on Dalai Lama. You called him a man, a monk, a mystique. While writing about Dalai Lama, did you ever find a tension between his philosophy of detachment and the realities of political struggle and exile? Or how did you personally make sense of it all?
No, I didn't find any tension at all because I think one has to recognize that Buddhism, by its very nature, pragmatic. It's not a dogma-driven philosophy. And the Dalai Lama, from his very early age, was thrown into a role where both as a temporal as well as spiritual leader, he had to do both. So it wasn't, there was no inherent tension in his mind. But after he came to India in 1959, and over the last, I think, 20, 25, maybe 30 years, he has gradually and increasingly stepped back from the political aspect of his life. He's no longer into the politics of Tibet, although for someone like him, it's practically impossible not to have the politics of Tibet ride on him all the time. But I think I have written a few pieces where I argue that he has, in a sense, grown larger than the cause of Tibet. Now he's sort of a global figure who articulates more fundamental ideas like compassion, for instance. Compassion sounds simple enough, but compassion in every walk of life is something that we so desperately need, especially now when you're looking at least three major wars going on simultaneously in Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, and of course the US, Israel, Iran conflict. Not to mention Pakistan, Afghanistan is going on off and on. There are so many conflicts going on in Africa. So at a time like this, compassion is something that people really need to recognize. And I think it's a very practical matter. So Dalai Lama these days talks mainly about that part of Buddhism. And I'm sure all of you know that by its very nature, Buddhism is a very rational philosophy. In fact, the fundamental part of Buddhism is that you have to question everything. You know, tribal obedience that you see in the world, in any other religion, you don't see it in Buddhism. There is no obedience expected from you. In fact, since we are talking about the Dalai Lama, soon after I was authorized to the biography, I went to McLeodganj for my first conversation with him. And before I started, his aides told me that it's a request that please do not hold back anything at all. Ask whatever you want because he enjoys a good conversation back and forth. So I said, thank you for telling me. I was not waiting for your permission, but I would have asked But my point is, he's perhaps the only leader of that stature who would open himself to any kind of questions. He wouldn't wear his being, in quotes, his holiness on his sleeve, as it were. He is not stuck up on that part at all. I think that's to do with the fact that he is a lifelong practitioner of Buddhism. So I didn't feel any tension at all. He doesn't feel it now. He has never felt it. He has handled it in an exemplary fashion. And China has also ensured that the politics of being the Dalai Lama is never separated from him. So he doesn't have a choice, but I think he has handled it remarkably well.
Thank you, sir. That was really insightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that's all. I mean, it was extremely wonderful to, to hear you talking about Dalai Lama because you have written about him so much, and I belong to a
Yeah,
political science domain. And there is one of the
that's
dream we have to meet Dalai Lama because our university have initially planned that it got cancelled out. But anyhow, that's, I mean, that's fantastic to hear. And we have covered a lot in this podcast, particularly. It was one of the fun conversation, one of the intellectual conversation. We had a
no,
mixture of both. And
thank
thank
you.
you so much, sir, for joining with us today. And yeah, we'll just see you in the next podcast.